Trump brings it up a lot and people make fun of him for it, but Trump got the second most votes of any president in U.S. history. People need to remember that. People need to stop assuming that the whole country is progressive and we just need to figure out how to pass the laws. There's a whole bunch of people in this country that disagree politically with each other, and we need to do a better job at bridging these gaps, because if it doesn't happen, this country is completely
How did the debate with Sam go?
I thought it went okay. We kind of got weeded down on something that I didn't think we'd get weeded down on, but...
Because I was remembering when you debated my former economics professor, Richard Wolff, there was a lot of time spent talking about what isn't socialism, what isn't feudalism, what isn't a dictatorship, what isn't communism.
I held Sam in way higher regard than Wolff. I think Sam's a pretty smart guy, though. I have a lot of respect for him.
Were you able to define terms in a way that the conversation was substantive?
Yeah.
You were?
I think so, yeah.
Did anybody convince anybody?
No, I think like I said, we got lost in the weeds on one topic, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've been thinking of going back to the debate game.
Identitarianism is one of the biggest things that I have a problem with due to my family history being, like, I know it's kind of a meme, but mixed. And this comes from when we look at affirmative action.
But Tim, isn't that identity politics? You're saying your view on this is informed, you're against identity politics as informed by your identity.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Do you think the debates need to be 3 hours long to be good, relevant content for the Twitch platform?
That's a really loaded question. Are you talking about like what gets the most viewership, what's the most entertaining, or what's like the best for like getting a good conversation?
I would say any of the above, because my experience is that when the conversation goes longer than 45 minutes, a sort of fatigue starts to set in, and it doesn't, I don't know how productive it is.
Well, I mean, it super depends on, it super depends on what your goal is. All of those things require vastly different types of things. Like if you want something, the most entertaining stuff is when you're screaming at each other and calling each other names and like going real hard, but that's obviously not a good way to get like a good conversation, high quality conversation where, you know, points are being spelled out correctly and everything, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. So you would not advise me to do like a 3 hour like shout fest, for example?
I love those. If you can find someone who wants to do it, that's some funny as shit in my opinion. But it's
I assume that's what everybody wants. You're saying it's actually tough to find people who want to do that.
Well, the problem is that most people don't have the mental constitution to endure in those environments for very long. So those communities full of people that do that self-destruct very quickly. Yeah.
Who do you think on the left right now, and by the left I mean people who are sort of like aligned more or less with you politically, who do you think is doing the best job of like smacking down the right-wingers right now?
Well, I mean, you ask me, this is a space that I'm in, so I'm going to give you a biased answer, obviously. I mean, I would say I do. It feels like...
well, of course, other than you.
Other than me. So there's like this weird trend that happened where it feels like people on the left for a while didn't want to engage with people on the right. And then I think I came along and I started debating a lot. And then like Vosh and other people came along and Hassan, they wanted to be like debaters. And then they started to engage with the right more. But now it feels like we've kind of gone back to the not engaging with the right. And now it's just all left-leaning people fighting with themselves. So like when I look at a lot of the discourse today from like the Brianna Gray or Jimmy Dore or the Young Turks, or like a lot of it, like, and I'm not trying to blame any of these individual parties, but it seems like most of the fighting right now happens between like, is AOC like a sellout Gusano fuck, or is Biden like a traitor to the working poor, right? Like that seems to be all the conversations. It seems like we don't really talk to or much about any Republican right-leaning people anymore. That seems to be like what I say, yeah.
I have like two views on that. On the one hand, I do think that dialogue is good when there can be sort of like points of agreement found. At the same time, new poll, 55% of Trump voters believe that the January 6th riots were an act of defending freedom. So it's like, is there really common ground to find with those people?
Yeah,
it's got to be.
That's my problem, is that like, I think that's why that conversation is more important than like, like, is our ideal society socialist or communist? Like, rather than going like so far left into fucking crazy land where it's like 15 an hour isn't enough, I want 35. And I was like, okay, I don't give a fuck about you, because half the goddamn Republican Party like believes in Jewish space lasers. Like, I think that is like way more important. And that's why like I've started like blocking and getting away from like 95% of these insane people on the left, because like I don't know anybody in my real life life, personal life, that wants us to fucking have like, you know, Mao come back from the dead and like roll tanks through the United States and makes a communist revolution. But my own mom is an anti-vaxxer. My own mom won't get a vaccine, even though we've had 2 family members die from the coronavirus, you know? So like those conversations are so much more important to me. And I think they're more important to this country than like, you know, did Jimmy Dore sexually harass, you know, some girl, the girl from the Young Turks? I don't mean to, Anna Kasparian, right? She's not just some girl. I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound rude there. But like or like is Biden left leaning enough? Like, why aren't they coming through and claiming control of the Senate to pass Medicare for all? Like, I don't want those conversations right now. Like, I genuinely want to talk to people that are trying to tell me why they don't think that vaccines work, because we're on the verge of a second nationwide lockdown. We're on the verge of like a second worldwide epidemic if we're not already experiencing it with the Delta variant, you know. And I look at every
mean country, that there's let me see if I can interpret, because you're shot out of a cannon today, Steve.
Sorry, my bad.
You're saying that there's lower hanging fruit that would make much of a bigger difference, whereas like the debate between if we got to social democracy, would we want to keep going to socialism, is less immediately relevant than just like, hey guys, can you go and get vaccinated?
Yes.
Wow.
That is exactly what I mean. Or like, rather than arguing like over whether Medicare for all or a public option is the best, like let's make sure that we all actually believe that our election happened and it was real. Okay. Because what is the percent? It's like 40% of Americans or not Americans, Trump. How many Republicans believe that the election was stolen? I think that's still ahead of
I think something like 60% of Trump voters think it was stolen.
Yeah. Like it's insane. That's unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So like, and nobody on the left is having those conversations anymore. Right now, we're all just talking about like how are we going to work on the commune? Like, am I going to be doing art 9 hours a day or 8 hours a day when I work on the factory farm for a little bit to make sure we all have avocados to eat? Like, that's what it feels like most of the conversations on the left are now. I'm not there for it. I don't give a fuck. Like, you know.
Speaking of which, by the way, where are you on the grafting of avocado trees?
The grafting of avocado trees?
Yeah.
I don't know what that means, David.
You've not taken a position on that.
What is the grafting of avocado trees?
Well, the thing is, a lot of avocados, if you just plant the seed, you know, the pit, you'll get a tree and you'll wait 10, 12 years and then there will be no fruit. And so the new hot thing, to quote Donald Trump, is that you start a new avocado tree, but then you graft onto it a little branchling from a known fruiting avocado tree to ensure you don't spend 12 years waiting for nothing.
Oh, is that a real thing or?
That's absolutely real.
Oh, okay.
Are you in favor of that, I guess, is the question.
Is there a reason not to be?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, then I guess it sounds fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you.
Okay.
All right, good. And then from the standpoint of future debates, you got anything else planned?
I have a debate against some conservative lady soon, Lisa Elizabeth. I don't know who the fuck this is, about whether or not there's like systemic racism in policing, which I think is pretty easy. I'm on a panel tomorrow for all white people.
Wait, what do you? Hold on a second. You're representing the white race on the panel?
It's whites only on the panel, and it's going to be a conversation about white spaces and if they're needed. So that'll be a very interesting conversation.
Wow, who else is on that?
A bunch of smaller political creators, but man, I can't wait for the Twitter headlines on that one. Known racist.
Is it a white supremacy panel?
Well, you know, I'm sure everybody will think it'll be. Maybe it will be. Who knows? We'll find out, I guess, when we start chatting.
Do you know who's organizing it?
Yes. That's
Are you willing to say?
It's a guy that does political panels on Twitch called Prime K's, but this is all like kind of like smaller creators, so.
This is not in person, right?
What's wrong with it being in person?
No, I'm asking if it is. I'm just saying.
Yeah, well, you had that like downturn on your voice, like you were looking.
Oh no! I'm assuming that this will be. You're not like driving somewhere for this.
It's online.
Yeah. Okay. Wow, that's great. And the point will be to determine if anything like white student union, white spaces are needed.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Wow. And what will your position be?
I'm not actually sure anymore. I don't know. Maybe you need a space for white people to decompress. We get a lot of hate online these days, David, and all feelings are valid, right?
The only concern I have is that as a Cuban American, are you valid for? That's the problem with this identity.
Well, see,
stuff.
I have a multiracial experience, so I can inhabit multiple spaces. Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay.
But I would say I have a very white experience in the United States.
I think your socially assigned race would be white. I agree with that.
Well, I'm glad we agree.
I wouldn't be allowed on that panel, right? Like I'm definitely not, like, because I'm fully Argentinian.
Well, I'm looking at you right now. Can you open your eyes real wide for me? Let me see them. I think you'd be okay.
I'd be okay on the panel or off the panel?
I think you'd be okay on the panel. I think.
Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah,
Well,
just
well, maybe I'll look into doing that. I don't know. I'm worried about the branding of you participating in this.
I know that's going to be the funnest part. Known Rittenhouse defender, BLM hater, Destiny on an all white exclusive panel. That's. I'm just waiting for the headlines on that one.
Well, I mean, good luck with that. I'm a little worried. I wish we would have run this by your agent. I don't know.
Oh, I've gone through 4 of those. For some reason, they seem to keep quitting. David, I don't know why.
Is it because they keep telling you, listen, if you do the white only panel, I can't really represent you?
No, usually it's because they open my Twitter one time and then they just ghost me. You know.
Hey, hold on, I thought you were banned from Twitter.
I am, my past Twitters, I mean. And then my friend has a Twitter account and we share some views sometimes, so they're worried that there might be a lot of crossover between my personal views and my friends' views, so.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Hey, is it true that the host of the panel is not white tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm gonna have a big conversation with him about that. I don't know if we're gonna have him maybe log out of the conversation for an hour and then check back in on us. We're probably gonna need like an official person to answer the Zoom door or something to make sure he's not intruding on our white space. But maybe he's got a white friend. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
I guess what I'm asking is the host interested in the topic by virtue of not being white himself?
I think it's just I think. Oh, I don't want to misquote, but I think it came up as a joke, because he has a panel because he is black and he has a panel called All Black Everything, and so they have like, and I think somebody's a joke. I think on one of the shows like we should have an all white panel, call it All White Everything, and I think he ran with the joke. He's like, yeah, fuck it, let's do it one time and we'll see what happens or whatever. So I don't think he's planning on this being like a normal thing. I think it's just like a.
All right, well, it sounds pretty compelling. Hey, let me just run one other thing by you. Mm-hmm. As I'm sure you know, I coined the term giga cringe close to a year ago. And today, a user who streams under the handle Vosh responded to Tim Pool using that term and didn't credit me. Do you think he should have credited me?
I mean, if he didn't credit you, I would fully support you mobilizing some lawyers, open with a cease and desist. Tell him you want retroactive credit, and then if he doesn't, you should just unleash the full force of David Pakman's show onto that production, I would say.
What do you think the damages would be?
To him or to you?
Like that I could sue for.
Well, giga cringe, I would probably do a lot of searching around, probably try to value each impression that you find on Twitter, on Google. I try to see how much money he made off of it. I would say that like if he used giga cringe in a show, I'd say probably 5 to 10% of the ad revenue earnings on that show are probably rightfully yours. There's probably a lot more people sticking around. Yeah, I would say
because you know how it is with these things. Like getting a license up front is always cheaper than having to then fix it later. You know?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, what would you license giga cringe for? Yeah, if you thought about like mechanical license, use like what kind of like you'd
probably just a trolling license.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. Anyway, we'll look into it. But in all seriousness, Bosch was involved in a pretty cringy thread, not on his behalf, but Tim Pool was like, he seems to not understand vaccines. It was really weird. I don't know if you saw it.
Every time people don't understand things, they end up like when you talk them through it, they end up remaking the thing. I don't know if you know that. Like, so like for libertarians, you'll be like, how do you figure out like who has land? And they'll be like, well, you'd have an agreement between 2 people. What if there are 3 or 4 people involved? Well, you'd probably get one person that would be kind of like arbitrating the agreement. It's like, okay, well, like they reinvent government, right? And I noticed like I argued with a guy about vaccine related stuff before, and he's like, I don't believe in vaccines. I believe in an immune system. And I was like, well, what do you mean by that? And he's like, well, I think that if I have exposure to the virus over time, I think that my immune system will. And it's like, okay, yeah, like.
Imagine if we could come up with something that would get your immune system to where you want it to be. Like, yes, exactly.
And he ends up like basically reinventing vaccines on Twitter. And I'm like, yeah, like I agree. I'm not even disagreeing with you. Everything you're saying is totally right. You're so close, you know? Yeah.
I was thinking like maybe a way to get some of these right wingers to get vaccinated would be to spread as a rumor that liberals are trying to keep the vaccine from them.
Yeah, maybe. You know what's really...
I mean, it's as good an idea as any, I think.
Yeah, probably. Something that's really sad is like there is a future where Donald Trump getting elected would have been better for the entire world, because it might be the case that Republicans would have actually gotten vaccinated if Trump was president instead of Biden. That's really sad to me. It's really strange to see other countries are like clamoring for vaccines, and the U.S. has infinite of them, and they just don't take them. Like,
I know. No, I don't. I think you're probably right on that. It would have been obviously better not to have Trump at the beginning of the whole thing, but I think you're right, because the liberals were going to get vaccinated either way.
Yeah, of course.
But I think it's hard to argue that you're wrong about that.
It's really, really, really frustrating to me, but it's also really frustrating.
Sorry.
It's really frustrating when people talk to me about like, hypothetically, in the future, there might be side effects that we don't know about, that we haven't seen anywhere, that might affect. It's like, okay, yeah, maybe, but why don't you compare that to what you know right now about the coronavirus? Why don't you I don't understand how you think that this trade is intelligent, and then all these people end up getting infected anyway, and it's like, ugh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say that well, first of all, I was going to ask you if you're looking to get any additional doses.
Unfortunately, I've hit a soft cap on how many I can get, because most of the healthcare workers now at the places that I've been vaxxing up at recognize me. So they usually call security and I have to leave. I thought about going out of city, but I don't know how I feel traveling yet for them. So we'll see in the future. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's super aggressive. And then the last thing I wanted to ask you about was, are you worried about the, the Marjorie Taylor Greenes, the Matt Gaetz, that type of thing? If they do get reelected in 2022, it's just going to reinvigorate all of these aggressive Trumpists. And then it could be, it could be a decade after that before we excise them.
Here is, okay, I think I've given too many takes for your audience to warm up to me. So let me give you a hot take to make them all hate me again. Please. I think that people looking at Marjorie Greene Taylor, trying to like get her stripped of like committees or whatever in Congress and all that shit, I disagree with that wholeheartedly. I think that she should be allowed to participate in government in any way that she wants to if she's an elected official. I think that people on the left right now are too fixated on trying to get the processes rigged in their favor rather than like trying to change the minds of the American people. And I think that the best way to get more people on your side is with, as Biden said, kitchen table issues. So getting like this big infrastructure bill, like trying to win over like more American minds through like dedicated stimulus to working class Americans. I think that going in that direction and winning elections that way, I think is way better than this demonization of people. Because like it or not, having a common enemy, or having people attack you is just a really big way to rile up support for your side. So like, who cares about Marjorie Greene Taylor? She's fucking crazy. If you know she's crazy, you know she's crazy. If you don't know she's crazy, then somebody on the left sure as fuck isn't going to convince you otherwise, right? It shouldn't be whether or not Marjorie Greene Taylor is insane and into QAnon. It should be whether or not she voted for the infrastructure bill, or whether or not she voted for stimulus, or whether or not she voted for the coronavirus relief, or whether or not she wants to keep your child tax credit around. I think if Democrats can just keep centered on these economic issues and make it about that, they're not the party that wins the culture war. They're the party that makes your life better materially. I think that that's like a way better path forward.
Yeah, but so I agree about going back to policy. A lot of these people don't have any policy, but I think what you're missing is if you ignore everything other than policy, they just keep suppressing the vote. So you've got to keep working on that. That's not a cultural issue. I'm not saying fight about trans girls in sports. I'm not saying that. Mm-hmm. But you can't just do economic issues, because then they pass 250 voter suppression bills and it doesn't matter that people like your economic policy.
Maybe that's another conversation, but
it's part of this one.
Yeah, if you ever really want to get into the I don't think voter suppression is anywhere near as big a deal in the U.S. as people make it out to be. I think that the big issue is interest around elections. And I think you can look at disparities between local elections and national elections, or you can look at the disparities between like how did people vote when there was more voter suppression for Obama versus how did they vote for, Trump or Biden. Like, I think that whether or not people want to vote is way more influenced by their interest in an election rather than the amount of voter suppression that exists. That's an unpopular opinion, but there's a lot of articles that are written about that.
I think here's where I would agree with you, which is because of the low voter participation rate, mm-hmm. It is undeniable that if either side in a national election could just boost turnout 5%, yep. It dramatically outdoes the level of voter suppression that's currently going on. Sure. I think that's a mathematical reality.
Of course, yeah.
Neither party ever does that, really. What I mean is, this past election, there was just record turnout on both sides because there was more interest. But I think what you're saying is mathematically sound.
Yeah, and people
But
need to
not a
be aware
reason
of
to
that.
ignore.
Yeah, for sure. Trump brings it up a lot, and people make fun of him for it. But Trump got the second most votes of any president in U.S. history. People need to remember that. People need to stop assuming that the whole country is progressive, and we just need to figure out how to pass the laws. There's a whole bunch of people in this country that disagree politically with each other, and we need to do a better job at bridging these gaps. Because if it doesn't happen, this country is completely fucked.
Now, I do have to ask about what some in my audience feel is maybe a hypocritical or concerning statement that you made. One of my viewers points out that you're insisting that the left should really stick to debating relevant and important topics, but then you're also on a panel about white spaces and that there may be an inconsistency there.
Oh, yeah, that might actually be something that seems confusing. Let me clear it up for that viewer. So my name is Stephen Bonnell. My gamer name is Destiny, and I stream politics on twitch.tv. I'm not an elected lawmaker that sits inside Congress that actually makes laws or determines what the national agenda is going to be legislatively. That's an easy mistake. A lot of people mix it. Yeah, I know people mix it up a lot, but believe it or not, there's a lot of things that I say and do. I personally, now this is just my personal perception, I don't think that Biden should spend 6 hours a day hard stuck in Diamond 4, but I like to do it. Now, that might make me a hypocrite to some, but to others, I would point out that I'm not the sitting president of the United States. If Jimmy Carter wanted to play League, maybe that would be okay or whatever, but yeah.
So when you meant elected officials that are on the left need to focus on that, not necessarily game streamers.
No, or pundits. Let me be clear. I'm sorry. Material issues are important, but social issues are important too. Trans people and LGBT issues, those are important. I just think that Democrats, you only have so much political capital and political will to get things done, and that needs to be put in the highest. What is? It's kind of like when you're a business owner, right? What is the least amount of work I can do for the biggest payoff? You always knock out those issues first. You're not going to buy a $50,000 camera if you don't have lights in your studio, right? You're not going to buy a $200,000 internet connection if you don't have a computer to show. Right. That's all I'm saying is that focus on your important issues first. And right now, I think the economic stimulus is absolutely that issue.
Well, you really said it all. From a business standpoint, I did want to ask you. I'm looking to delve into the. I'm looking to do a streamer interview series. Are there big time streamers that have interesting business models, or who you think would otherwise not be opposed to engaging with people like me that do primarily politics, which many people stay away from because it can be toxic?
Literally everybody in the smaller politics community on Twitch would probably love an opportunity for an interview like that. I would.
Let me clarify: non-politics people, streamers that are not in politics,
streamers that aren't in politics that would talk to you. Oh, for what kind of interviews?
Just interviews about their streaming, presence, their online presence, etc.
I mean, I imagine almost anybody would probably say yes. No.
Wow. Who are even the big streamers I should be talking to?
You should just straight out message Pokemon, XQC.
Pokemon.
Yeah, these people they'll 100% go for it for sure.
Pakman, I'm so sorry I missed your raid for 376 viewers. Thank you so much. I follow you and welcome to Twitch. I want to watch more of your content. I hope you enjoy your stay. I don't even think you're here, nor will you ever probably see me saying this because you raided me 17 minutes ago. Anyways, thanks to anyone that came from him.
Her heart rate going up while she says this. Anybody notice that? When she started talking about me, she was at 73. And by the end of this, her pulse is elevated. Is that a goof or is that for real? Is anybody else noticing that? Mentioning me literally elevated her pulse about 15%. That's interesting.
Wow. Okay. So hold on. Was that XQC?
Yeah, XQ.
I'm kidding around. I know who I'm kidding around.
It's actually XQ Cow, but yeah.
XQ Cow. That I will make a note of. Geez, I don't want a humiliating thing where I'm like, hey, okay. Yeah, I feel like the big egos can be a factor on Twitch.
Yeah, a little bit, but I mean, you're in the YouTube world. Their big egos are here too, for sure, right?
Yeah. No. So I guess so. All right. Well, I think it's all going really well. Are you back? Are things going okay with Twitch for you? Or I'm not even sure how to ask the question.
Yeah, they're going okay right now. I got my subscriber button back. So if you've got Amazon Primes, don't sub to David, sub to me instead. So, yeah.
I'll just say, make sure you're using your Bezos bucks. Don't leave them in Bezos's pocket. I won't. I'm not going to patronize the audience by saying what you're saying. But
you don't want him to go to outer space again, right? One trip was enough.
I think one is probably enough. Yeah, I think I think we probably learned all we're going to learn from Bezos going one time.
Think so. We could go in the future though. Would you do it if somebody offered you the chance? Yeah, like $5,000, $10,000 for a rocket trip up to, you could float around for like a minute and then come back.
Yeah, I've said I'm not like super eager to be in the first 10 people to do it, but yeah, I would be interested. I would certainly be interested.
Okay. Cool.
Any trips planned?
I got all sorts of trips planned. I'm probably going to Canada, London for a little bit, and then Sweden, and then Amsterdam next month. So.
Wow.
Yep, they're finally opening up again. So I want to get out there before the Delta variant has turned everybody into walking zombies.
Do you have an airline preference? Not that you're sponsored by any airline, but.
I like Delta's planes. American Airline is pretty good too. Those two I would say. I like planes that have outlets at every seat so I can plug my laptop in and play video games. That's important to me. That is literally the most important part.
You game the entire flight.
Absolutely, because the brain rot games that I play, I can pass like 10 hours in like 30 minutes. It's unbelievable. The types of games that I play will do that.
It's like a vortex you enter.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
All right, Stephen, be well. Thank you for the call. I called you, but I still thank you for the call.
Thank you for checking in. I appreciate it, okay? Remember to hit that like and subscribe, and don't forget the notification bell so that my videos show up right in your feed.
Literally elevated her pulse about 15%. That's interesting.